Hello again, Sydney.
Oh, it's you again. What do you want?
I figured I would give you one more try to tell me what your favorite scary movie is.
Because you asked, I guess I can give you one more. I guess I'll go with Sinister.
Ooh, Sinister.
Yeah,
That's
Sinister
actually
2. Yeah, Sinister
what?
2. It
No,
just does
no,
everything
don't do
better.
this
The
again. No.
tapes are
That's it.
scarier.
I gotta kill this
loved
bitch.
it. Yo, what is going on, guys? Welcome to my review for Scream 2. As you guys know, I am going down the line reviewing Screams 1 through 6, then ranking them all after Scream 7. So if you like this type of content, like the video, join the channel down below. Once again, Scream 2 is directed by Wes Craven, written by Kevin Williamson, and stars Neve Campbell, David Arquette, Courteney Cox, Liev Schreiber, Timothy Olyphant, and many others. I've always had a pretty good time with this movie. I think for what it's trying to do as a sequel, it's fun. It does kind of maintain what the first movie did unique, but it's also kind of standoutish in what it tries to do on its own if you do watch them back to back. I do have one glaring issue with it though, so stick around for that at the end. In the film, it follows Sidney Prescott back once again, played by Neve Campbell, and she has now moved away to college, trying to get over the tragedy of Woodsboro. But knowing the way this franchise plays out, knowing how unlucky Sidney Prescott is, the past is not going to let her go. As Ghostface has come back, he's tormenting her and her friends once again, and she's going to have to survive one more time. Starting off with the opening scene of this film, I think the opening of this movie is pretty damn funny, honestly. I know some people have a problem with it because it's not as iconic as number one, but again, as I said in my review for number one, I view these movies through the lens of Scary Movie and Scream. They're kind of all blended together. So whenever I watch the opening of Scream 2, I laugh my ass off because if you've seen Scary Movie, you know what they're parodying, and it all just blends together to perfection. Gotta give them some credit for that. I do think it sets the tone for what this movie's kind of going to be. And what this movie is going to be is kind of a comedy mixed with horror elements. In fact, every time I go back and watch this movie, I remember how hilarious this movie is because at a lot of points in the movie, I get belly laughs out of it, especially Joel, the cameraman. His character being so self-aware as the token black guy cameraman who's probably going to get killed off makes me die of laughter. I mean, the way that character is portrayed, the way he's sharpening a weapon in the background, the fact that he is just like, fuck this, I'm getting out of here, I'm not dying with you people. One of the funniest characters, if not the funniest, in this entire franchise. And I think the humor is a result of this movie attempting to be so meta, for better and worse, because this movie, again, is doing a lot of what the first movie did. You have a lot of exposition here from Randy's character about what it means for a sequel to be effective, a lot of exposition and lore from him of what horror movies do. So for that reason, this movie is pretty funny a lot of the time, almost to its detriment. You almost forget you're watching a horror movie a lot of the time. It's kind of funny that Scary Movie parodied a lot of this film, because this movie almost feels like a parody in and of itself a lot of the time. So I think how much you enjoy this sequel kind of depends on what your brand of horror is. If you like the old school aware slashers but still more horror, you're obviously going to prefer the original. But if you like a more light in tone, commentary heavy, kind of funny version of Scream 1, you might actually prefer this sequel. What I enjoy the most about this movie as a sequel is I think it might actually have the strongest core of characters in the entire franchise. Maybe not volume-wise, because there are less main characters at this point, because a lot of the main ones got killed off in the first film. But in number two, I feel like the characters are evolving more than they are in any other movie. For example, Sidney Prescott is no longer the innocent young girl she was in the first film. In this movie, she's forced to grow up because of that tragedy. On one hand, she still wants to be that innocent girl. She wants to kind of put the past behind her, but she's also grief-ridden. She's trauma-ridden from all of this shit that happened to her mom, to her friends. So she's trying to put that behind her and kind of balance how to be a survivor with being a fighter. She eventually goes on to morph into this badass final girl, one of the best ever. But in this movie, she's still working through the kinks a little bit. She's like, why me? I just want to move on. It's working through that process that gives her character such a range. It makes her probably the most unique version of herself in this franchise. I think this is Neve Campbell's best performance in the franchise as well, because as I just said, she's asked to do the most. This character is all over the place from start to finish, which makes her character feel very real. Like this is what a character going through this would be. So I always enjoy watching that journey of her kind of working through it all to eventually become that fighter and realize to survive, she has to adapt. You also have Dewey back once again, played by David Arquette, and the same as her, this is going to be a theme with basically all of the characters in this. His character is also learning. He has physical limitations now. He was stabbed in the back. He has nerve damage. So he's dealing with that, but also the emotional aftermath of the fact that he feels like he was fucked over by Gail. She wrote a book about him. She slandered him. She kind of threw him in the dust, used him. So he's kind of balancing out. Does he want to be a cop anymore? Does he want to look after Sydney? He wants to distance himself from Gail. So his character as well is not yet the all-encompassing good guy of these movies as he will go on to be. And finally, we have Courteney Cox back reprising her role as Gail Weathers, this predatory journalist. She's still more on the side of kind of this ruthless bitch who just wants to do anything for money. But she's getting snippets now of what humanity actually is, how unethical her job is, seeing all of these teenagers die, preying on them, making money off of them. Don't get me wrong, she's not fully there yet, as she's completely replaced her dead cameraman in 5 seconds with Joel, the hilarious comedic relief. So her character, like the other two, is still evolving, and eventually these become kind of stagnant because the movies keep going and going. That being said, I do think since you have a very strong cast of core characters, I think you sacrifice a lot of the supporting cast to do this. Because this movie is trying to juggle so much at once, you really feel like, much like the characters are, this franchise was still working through its kinks and trying to discover its own identity. In this movie, there's a lot of moving parts. You have Sidney Prescott's emotional journey, Dewey and Gail. You have what's going on with Ghostface being back, how that relates to the first one, the death of Sidney's mother. You have the storyline continued on of Liev Schreiber playing Cotton from the first film, who is accused and now acquitted because of what happened with Stu and Billy. You have Timothy Olyphant's character added here. You have more Randy character here. You have Randy's exposition of what it means to be in a horror film. So this movie, I don't want to use the term jumbled mess. It just has so much different stuff going on. For better and worse, it doesn't feel like the first film, even though it is in the Scream universe. One of the things Randy talks about a lot is the rules of a sequel and how characters should act and how audiences should interpret sequels. And one of the things he says is that these movies should be bigger, bloodier, more ambitious, bigger set pieces. The kills should be more extravagant. And I do think for the most part, this movie does deliver on that. Now, I don't think the kills as a whole are probably as iconic as number one because of how they're attached to the plot in number one. The car scene, that scene is one of the most memorable scenes in this franchise. And there's also a scene involving a recording studio with Courteney Cox's character. I think both of those scenes are pretty much awesome. But with this being a horror sequel, I have to point out, this is one of these movies that in attempting to be bigger and better, kind of trades realism for cool set pieces and being bigger and better. Which actually brings me to my biggest issue with this movie I mentioned earlier, and why I think people either love or hate these films. It's the giant killer reveal. I think if you have an eye for these type of films, even if you haven't seen this movie yet, and you pay attention to subtle details and the way they discuss things, I think it is incredibly obvious who the killer is in this movie. Which segues me to my second biggest issue with the movie, and it actually might be my biggest issue overall. When you get to the major reveal of this and the killer's unmask and the exposition dump of why they're doing this, I don't really like this movie's final 10 minutes. In fact, I think it's one of the weakest of the entire franchise. Half of it feels very generic, like everybody's going to know it, and the other half feels like, holy fucking shit, there's no way I could have figured that out. And it doesn't feel like that in the like, wow, my mind is blown type of way. It's like oh, that's kind of lazy because there's no other way to write that. Like nobody could have figured that out. And overall, I don't think the final 10 minutes of the movie really works together at all. I think it's a major issue that bumps this movie down a lot from what would otherwise be a very strong entry. And one final note when it comes to realism, I don't know who designed the final set of this film, but it's like Frankenstein's fucking laboratory. Like every time you have people moving up and down these knobs, electricity cackling, I go, who the hell would allow that to be the theater? I'm just saying. So when it comes to sequels, Scream 2 is not perfect, but I still do think it is one of the better sequels. I have a pretty damn good time with it. I'm assuming if you clicked on this video, you have seen the Scream franchise, so comment down below, let me know what you think as well, and I'm going to put a link up here to all of the other entries in this series. Be sure to check those out. Aside from that, I'll see you in Scream 3. Peace!